Hello everyone, this is Mario with Mario's History Talks. Now I received quite a bit of positive feedback, especially over Instagram, regarding some of the little history talks I did while in Macedonia. And after consulting with some of you, I realized there might be some interest in doing a full-scale podcast with these short little episodes of Mastering History. So today's the first one, and we'll be covering the Battle of Gaugamela, because today is October 1st, the anniversary of the battle. So, October 1st in 331 BCE was the most famous battle of Alexander the Great in potentially ancient and modern world history. Why? Well, this was the battle in which Alexander completely defeated the Persian king Darius and won the whole Persian Empire. This established Western culture throughout Asia. And up until now, Alexander had defeated the Persian king Darius at Granicus and at Issus, a lot of other places. And Darius had actually offered Alexander half of his empire if he just stopped going forward and attacking the Persians. And Alexander very famously replied, just as the earth can have no more than one sun, so too can Asia have no more than one king. So Alexander kept pushing forward. And the two forces finally met at Gaugamela, which is present-day Iraq, basically. And historical estimates on the sizes of the armies tend to be viewed at a little more skeptically nowadays. With modern estimates, though, they place the strength of Alexander's Macedonians at about 45,000 troops, and the strength of Darius's Persians were probably anywhere from 200 to 250,000. So Alexander was outnumbered 5-1 during the whole battle. And the morning of the battle, though, he actually overslept. He was so confident in his strategy, he was so confident in his troops, he felt no need to lose any sleep over it. And the Persians, though, they had anticipated that the Macedonians would try to attack during night, and a surprise attack. So they stayed up all night anticipating an attack that never came. And Alexander's own general Parmenion, who was a grizzled old Macedonian war veteran and a general under Philip, actually advised him to launch a sneak attack. And Alexander thought this was cowardly and not honorable. And he said to him, and I would do this if I were Parmenion, but I'm not. I'm Alexander. So the morning of the battle comes, and Alexander, like I said, oversleeps. Why is he so confident? Well, a couple of reasons. The backbone of the Macedonian army, and this is probably the most potent, important strategy to ever come about in military history, was the Macedonian phalanx. So the Macedonian phalanx was basically a formation of 16 men across and 16 men deep, 256 men total, in a perfect square with sarissas. Now, sarissas were 16 to 20 foot spears, a spear by which we had never seen before up until the Macedonians. The whole idea behind it was we make contact with the enemy before they have any chance of making contact with us. We create a buffer zone. So when you look at the phalanx, it is a bristling hedgehog of these long sarissas that are coming at you, and you have no way to go through them, around them. It's basically a wall coming towards you, and you have to engage them, and they're going to hit you before you hit them. So it's a very, very powerful weapon that the Macedonians were using, and it basically turned the tide of warfare from then on. So along with the sarissas and the phalanx, Alexander also strategically positioned his troops. He had his army on this left oblong formation at about a 45-degree angle to the Persians. Why? The Persians' most powerful weapon, besides the sheer strength of their army, was in fact these scythe chariots. These are chariots basically pulled by a horse that had blades on the wheels, and they were a very menacing weapon of the ancient days. I mean, they would cut down entire armies in an eye blink. So Alexander basically invited them to use this in the very beginning stages of the battle by opening up this huge pathway for them to be launched. So what he did was, though, he positioned his troops in what we call a mousetrap, where the phalanx would open up in the middle, remove their spears, so the horse would find it more safe to go into that middle, and basically the phalanx would close, envelop both the horse and the charioteer, and completely disengage them. So Darius launches his very on, proves to be very ineffective against the Macedonians and their horse trap, and the scythe chariot really after that is not used as a major weapon of warfare. So what does Alexander do next, though? He rides with his cavalry parallel to the Persian lines, hiding on his right side a group of peltasts, which were on foot, and they would throw small spears, rocks, javelins at the Persians. Now, the whole goal here was basically for the Persians to keep following Alexander, because this is a very unusual move on Alexander's part. The Persians actually thought he was like riding away from the battlefield. So the Persians kept moving, following Alexander, keeping their distance, while the Peltasts would quite literally just start attacking them from the side while they were hidden. And while the Persians kept following, there came a point in which they could no longer shift their men to follow Alexander and keep the integrity of their lines intact in the front. So Alexander sees a gap start to form in the Persian lines, and he orders his whole cavalry to turn 180 degrees and plunge into this gap. What he does with this is he accomplishes his famous hammer and anvil technique. The front phalanx of the Macedonians would serve as the hammer, crushing the Persians' front. Alexander's cavalry would ride around to the Persian back, and the army would be crushed in the middle. He'd pulled this off before, but not on this level. So Alexander goes there, plunges into the gap. He sees Darius. Ancient sources say Darius could see Alexander, and Alexander could see the fear in his eyes. He was only feet away from him. But at the last minute, he gets a call that Parmenian's flank is about to fall. The leftmost flank of the Macedonian army is about to fall. So he has a choice. Do I go after Darius now, become king of all Asia, or do I save a fellow soldier in general? Alexander, of course, picked the latter. He cursed Darius. He said he would travel to the end of the earth to find him, but he left and saved Parmenion. Now, the Macedonians, at the end of the day, they won. It was a very strategic, divisive victory. They lost probably anywhere from 500 to 1,000 troops, while the Persians lost around 50,000. It was a complete upset, obviously. And what happens with this? Alexander becomes Lord of all Asia, undisputed ruler of Asia. He paves the way for Western civilization, more of a cosmopolitan type atmosphere to develop, paves the way for Christianity, for the Roman Empire, you name it. It all happened in Gaugamela. So when people tell us that, Macedonians were small, were backward, or, the odds are against us, think back to the Battle of Gaugamela. Think back to what the average Macedonian villager saw on that battlefield. 250,000 soldiers coming at them, and them still standing their ground. So, a lot of lessons to be learned. On this day in history, the Battle of Gaugamela was won.